All right. On this episode, we are talking about the top 10 mistakes that we have made as entrepreneurs. And we're going to talk about them. Hopefully, we will let you know what we did wrong, how you cannot do what we did, avoid those same pitfalls. It's going to be interesting. So, I'm actually going to challenge Sevetri first. So it's technically we're doing five each. So I'm going to give my five. Sevitri's going to give her five. But this episode is about the top 10 mistakes that we feel we have made as entrepreneurs. So, Savitra, you first. What do you feel is a mistake that or learning lesson that you've had on your journey so far as an entrepreneur?
I would say if I had to think about some of my top lessons learned, I would say that execution matters more than ideas. You can have a ton of ideas over the course of your startups, over the course of your ventures, but the ones that you can actually execute on are the ones that really matter, right? I think that as founders, as entrepreneurs, we can get bogged down by, oh, I don't want to share this idea, or I don't want to tell someone, they might take my idea. But at the end of the day, it really boils down to what you can execute on, what you can actually bring to market, and what you can scale. And for me, I had to learn that yes, you could do a lot of different things, but you really need to focus on those few things that you can really execute. So that would be one of my top lessons. Just because you know how we are, we're always trying to brainstorm, which idea is going to stick. And it may take some time, right, to actually get through it. But at some point, you're going to have to focus in and shut out all the noise.
Yeah, I always tell entrepreneurs, like somebody will come to me and be like, I want to talk to you about this idea that I have, but like, would you be willing to sign an NDA? And I'm like, no, like I hear a million ideas a day. I promise you, I don't even have the time and capacity to take your idea. And number two, the saying I always say is ideas are cheap. The real value lies within the execution. So that's actually a great lesson. A lot of people do get so caught up in the idea. I don't want to tell anybody my idea. I'm going to hold on to it. And yeah, execution is what matters.
Yeah. Um, I was talking to someone, and I would say talking to someone, this was a researcher from Stanford, and he reached out to me because he was trying to interview women um, entrepreneurs, tech founders, etc. And I agreed to interview with him. And he was like, yeah, so this is going to come out in 2027. I was like, oh, Lord, that's forever from now, right? But time's going to fly by, and research takes a long time. And he started taking me through my journey. And so I had to recall my startup story, and I had to recall from the beginning of like, where are you from? What got you interested in entrepreneurship? What was that spark that kept you going? And how would you define success? And we talked through a lot of different lessons that I learned. And one of those was surrounding the need to have money, right, to infuse in your company. And so I always think back to that, like the importance of cash flow being king, and how it's important to your survival, to your livelihood, but also the survival and livelihood of your company. And how oftentimes founders find themselves at the very end, and then we end up like struggling trying to pivot or make a move, but essentially we are running out of cash. And so really honing in on our financials and our accounting, and getting a hold of that before it's too late is probably one of the biggest lessons that I've learned as an entrepreneur. If I had to throw in another lesson there, cash is king. Look at your financials, being able to understand them, being able to pivot and edit them in real time. And sometimes it doesn't look like month to month, or it doesn't look like every quarter. Sometimes that looks like daily cash
Yeah.
flow, monitoring your daily and weekly cash flow and making adjustments in real time, so that you don't reach the end of the month and you are short. And that's what happens to a lot of businesses, that ultimately puts us in this fight to stay alive. And we just, we feel the pain immensely and oftentimes can't survive it.
Yeah. So lesson one was ideas are cheap. You got to execute. Lesson two is cash is king. You got to know your financials. So for the entrepreneurs that are watching, what did you use? What do you use software wise in case they're looking for a way to better keep up with their startup or their business financials? Any recommendations you would throw out there of good practices of keeping up with company money?
Yeah, I mean, just having, so I am a believer of having like an accountant or someone that is a financial wizard. My strong point is not crunching numbers, right? Or being able to get in an Excel sheet and bend it and curve it and do all the formulas. That's not my strength. And so I had to learn very early, is that you need to find someone that's strong at that. And so when I'm starting a company, I will pay the extra. You can find a fractional CFO for $1,200 a month. Um, and for me, that means peace of mind and knowing that I'm not going to run out of capital before it's too late for me to make a change or shift. But even something as simple as QuickBooks, right? Like if you set your QuickBooks up properly, and y'all know how y'all have y'all QuickBooks set up, the invoices don't make sense, the numbers don't align to the bank, it's not connected properly to your bank account, so it's no longer pulling information. Your QuickBooks is set up janky. Set your QuickBooks up right. And that could be the only 1999 tool that you need to ensure that you don't fall victim to having improper financial statements and not being able to track your cash flow. So you could get real basic $20 a month for online QuickBooks.
Yeah. So my one of my lessons actually kind of piggybacks off of that, which is hire people for what you are not great at. I think I know I have been guilty of trying to do it all by myself. I'm a solo founder. I
Mm-hmm.
started out as a solo founder. I did a lot by myself. I wore every hat, which like most entrepreneurs, most of us are wearing 10 hats, 20 hats, especially CEOs. But in general, entrepreneurs are wearing so many hats. But I had to learn that it is okay and it's actually more beneficial to hire someone who is good at what you are not good at. I need to go hire somebody to develop. I am not a developer. I can do the basics, but let me go hire a developer. So definitely a lesson for me coming from the background of being a solo founder is hire people in the areas that you are not great at. And that's also the job as a CEO. Like your job is to delegate and find people who are great at what you are not the best at.
Yeah, the saying goes, do what you do best and outsource the rest.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
What's
that is
another
that was
lesson?
definitely a lesson I had to learn as a solo founder. Just wanting to do it all by myself takes way longer. Probably going to end up spending more money because you're trying to do something last minute. But yes, delegating, hiring people in the areas that you're weak.
Okay, let's keep going. I want to hear some more lessons that the
Another
Sheena
lesson
Allen
for
has
me.
learned on her
Ooh,
journey.
listen. Um, one of a huge lesson very, very, very early for me was and I don't know if it's because I'm a Pisces, but you're a Pisces too. I'm stubborn, like almost to a fault. Like I am extremely stubborn. So when I first started out, because I was a solo founder, I'm in Mississippi. I'm trying to do tech. I feel like I can't help any find someone to help me do what I need to do. And I was in this mindset of I'm just going to figure out how to do it by myself. I was very slow to reach out to mentors.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the lessons that I learned early was team. And even if it's not a team of like someone you're hiring full time or even fractional, having mentors and sponsors definitely makes a difference on your journey. And I had to learn that, like reaching out and asking people for help. Can you take a 30-minute call? Can you just point me in the right direction. And learning the difference also in mentors and sponsors. So I know you and I get inbound all the time with somebody saying, "Can you give me 30 minutes?" And mind you, it does get harder for people in certain times in their career. But I've definitely reached out to people on LinkedIn, and it's like I can't take a call, but if you can send me 2 or 3 questions, I can send you to the right person. I can
Mm-hmm.
shoot you in the right direction. And then again, knowing the difference in mentors and sponsors. There's people I've met, talked to that says, "Hey, I don't have time to be a mentor, or I'm not in the space right now that I can be a mentor, but I can be a sponsor." A mentor is someone is like, I want to pick up the phone, I can call you, have a 30-minute chat, let me XYZ. A sponsor is more like, I love what you're doing, I love who you are, I don't have that time, but they're gonna champion you when they walk into a room and somebody says, "Hey, I've been trying to figure out how to do XYZ. I know the perfect person who is perfect for that." So having mentors and sponsors and asking for help was definitely a lesson that I had to learn.
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about like mentors and sponsors. I never called them sponsors. I called them guides. I talk about this in my book, Resilient. And essentially, what I say is that, like you, I also have people who reach out to me who are asking for me to mentor them. And I always say mentorship is such a heavy lift, right? For me, my mentors have always come organically. It's come through like just building a relationship like over time. And then that just person became naturally my mentor. But when I would reach out to people that I wanted, that I looked at like, oh, they could really help me, they could guide me, right? I would essentially ask them that. Like, these are very specific things that I'm trying to do in my life to elevate my professional and, my personal journey. Could you be a guide for me, right? Could you essentially point me in the right direction? You don't have to tell it to me, just point me in the right direction, right? And so I refer to individuals like that as guides. And oftentimes people are just looking for a guide, not even a mentor per se.
Yeah, and I always tell people, don't be afraid, because like people say, well, where do I find a mentor? Like, where do I reach out to people? I don't have the network. LinkedIn is free. I mean, technically there's a paid version, but LinkedIn is free, and you will be amazed at who you will send a message to, and they will respond. Trust me,
Yeah.
I've done it. I've definitely just shot my shot. Either they're gonna respond or ignore it, and like they responded. So don't be afraid to like get to my DMs, to my LinkedIn inbox. You just never know what's gonna happen. But you can find mentors even if you don't have the network. So
Right. But come
definitely
with
listen.
something, right? Like,
This
come
is
with
true.
something. So many people reach out to me and they want something, they never come with something. And when I say by with something, it's about the ability for me to understand that if I get on the phone with this person and I take my time out with them, that they are going to put to use what I just told them. One of my mentors would say, I will invest in you, but eventually I'm going to return on my investment. And that doesn't mean monetary. That doesn't mean like I need something physically from you. It's that I want you to do what you said that you were going to do. Right. That's that return on investment that people are looking. So many people want to reach out to you and pick your brain for ideas and thoughts and information for things that they are never going to do, for things that they are never going to see to fruition, for things that they're never going to follow up on, never pick up a pen, never type a note about, but literally reach out to you to just waste your time. And so I always tell people, do some diligence about the person that you're reaching out to. I have 2 books out there. If I were going to reach out to someone, anyone I have ever reached out to, Darren Walker, for example, I wanted to get in front of him. I had opportunity to get in front of him years ago. We were going to be on the same panel. Darren Walker had a book that came out 3 months ago. Do you know I went out and bought Darren Walker's book? I read Darren Walker's book. And in the conversation between us on that stage, I used quotes of his from his book. Now, he looking at me like, oh, we need to talk after this. We need to have a conversation. It's that diligence. It's that respect, just me being respectful of his time, me telling him without even telling him, I have done the work. And this is what this relationship means to me. And that's why I have done the work. And so that's the type of energy, that's the type of time you have to be on for me to engage you
Yeah, and
before
it's
anybody
also
sends me a LinkedIn message. That's the type of energy. I'm just letting you know because that's the time I'm on. So you have to be on my same energy flow for me to like really feed into somebody.
and also, speaking of like even finding those mentors or asking someone for their time, I always, always tell people, please don't ask me for a warm intro if you are not ready for that warm intro, because you are wasting my time. You're wasting or working against my relationship with someone. Example, if person A reaches out to me and be like, hey, can you introduce me to Savitra? What do you need? Like, don't have me go to Savitra and be like, can you take this call, let me do this warm intro, and then you get in front of her and waste her time, because guess what, she ain't gonna look at you crazy, she gonna look at me crazy and be like, now Sheena, you are why. And so I always tell people, please don't waste warm intros when you're trying to get to mentors or people for certain things. Like, those relationships matter for sure, which is a lesson technically. So lesson number 5, relationships matter for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think that was one of my lessons as well, like build a strong network. And oftentimes to build a strong network, you can do it directly, like walking up to someone, meeting them, but sometimes you need a intro via someone else to what you just said. You need a warm intro to someone. And oftentimes that's just how your network expands and how it grows is via direct contact. So you meeting people, but also because someone introduced you. And I will tell you, so many people reach out to me, particularly, and I'm sure for you, because they want intros to like investors, right? And so I will get on a call with the founder and they will pitch me their company. And I will say, and then from there, they will ask me to introduce them to other investors. And sometimes their companies don't make sense. And so, and I say by don't make sense, it is not ready to be pitched to an investor. And so it's not that I will introduce you to other investors. Is you may not be ready for that introduction and you probably need to go back to the drawing board, because if I had all these questions and if I'm confused and if I'm like trying to figure out like why would you do it this way, if I'm looking at you crazy because the valuation is probably 50 times X in what anybody would give you with no revenue, no customers, no users, right? There's no way I can introduce you to that investor, because then that investor gonna look at me like, why would you introduce me to this person?
Yes. And then the next time you reach out, they're gonna be like, the last person you sent me, yeah. So yeah,
Exactly.
definitely. I'm with you. Anytime someone asks me for a warm intro, it is exactly what are you looking for. If it's a for investor, pitch it to me. Let me see your pitch deck. Like, are you actually ready for this? Because if your example, I've had someone ask me for an intro to a seed stage investor, and you and I talked about this before. Seed stage, pre-seed, it also has changed. But if you are literally at idea stage and you're asking me to intro you to pitch for an investment to someone that I know is not about to even entertain it unless you have 50K MRR at minimum, I'm not gonna make
Yeah.
that intro. It's not against anything against you. It's the fact that I don't want to hurt my relationship by sending you over there, and that investor's gonna be like, Sheena, this doesn't even fit our investment thesis at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So I'm really generous, I feel, with my network. And for people who feel otherwise, it's probably because something right was off and I felt like they needed a little bit more work. And I'll tell a person that too. Like once you get to this point, then reach back out to me. I'm a big believer of like kind of assigning a little bit of homework to see if a person actually does it. And if they do, then I'm like, okay, that's what I needed, right? To make that intro. Another lesson I would say I learned is hire slow, and maybe not that slow in tech. You got to hire a little bit faster, but definitely fire fast. There are so many times where I knew I needed to like let someone go, but I gave them the benefit of doubt, or I kept them around longer. I um, put some of the blame back on myself for why they didn't have what they needed to thrive. And in reality, I should have let that person go, right, much sooner. And it's interesting because my executive coach sent me an email on Monday. He forwarded me an email, and he said, I'm reading this. I think I'm going to sign up to round out my education. And he was talking about signing up for a webinar, which the webinar was mastering employee training terminations. So mastering employee terminations. And so I looked at it, and basically the webinar was like, conduct terminations with professionalism and care, minimize legal risk and compliance issues, and then 3, safeguard your business and preserve your culture. Now, I will tell you from experience, you could do all those single things and still something goes wrong when it comes to letting someone go, right? You could literally check every single box. Possibly you could say it in the nicest voice. You can give them time. You can give severance. You could do all the things and still get hit with a lawsuit. You could do all the things and people still think you are Corella DeVille. You hear
Yep.
me? And so I don't know if there is any true safeguard that a business owner can put in place. There just isn't, that can protect them for what may come when you're terminating employees. But that does not alter my belief that when it's time for someone to go, it's time for them to go.
Lesson 6, guys. Lesson 6 is fire fast. Don't hold on to them, because guess what? Every month you're paying their payroll to someone who is not contributing to the business. That is more burn for no reason, because you're just wasting money because they shouldn't be there. I am too guilty of that as a founder, as a CEO, knowing that this employee, this person is not, because one thing I'm a believer of, which kind of goes into this lesson, um, is I'm a believer that, especially as a early stage company, when it's 2, 5, even 10, I I only hire people at that stage who I feel is there to work with me, not work for me. Because to me, those are two totally different things. If you are employee number 3 and you are there to work for me, meaning you want to punch a clock, get your check, and go home, this this is not for you. Like, you should go work in corporate and be employee number 1200, if that's the case, or number 300, however different corporations do. When you are in a startup or a small business and it is 2 of us, 5 of us, 10 of us, I need you there working with me, not for me. Now, that does not mean I expect you to be working at 2 a.m., because I'm working at 2 a.m. But I also know that doesn't mean you're going to punch a clock from 9 to 5 and go home. This is it's a corporate, baby. This is small business. This is startup. So you do have to hire fast, depending, but fire fast is really important. And I learned that to say, hey, if you're not here to work with me, you just don't fit. And you got to go.
Yes. And I'll say, will I be making you work at 2 a.m.? No. But do I want to hire someone as one of my first 5 employees that will work to 2 a.m. because they just need to get something done to make the thing do what it do, because we got things to do and business to make? Yes, I want the person with the mentality. They don't have to work to 2 a.m., but yeah, sometimes they might work to 2 a.m. because they are working in a startup. They do know what they signed up for, and they know how we have to maneuver and move. It kind of makes me think back to something Steve Jobs said. And Steve Jobs is by no means the great example of an employer, because many of his employees say the complete opposite. But one thing I have always agreed with Steve Jobs on is that I want to hire people not to tell them what to do, but I want to hire people that can tell me what to do, right? And I've always gone by that mindset that if I hire you over marketing, I don't want to be better than you in marketing. If I hire you in finance, I can't be better than you in finance. If I hire you for customer success, you got to be better than me in customer success, right? And so I want people that are smarter than me on my team. I want people to tell me that this is the way it should be done, and then create a plan, a strategy, and execution in order to do that, and say, here it is. And I think that is very much so the early stage startup employees that I look for. And if that's not what is given, it's probably time for me to sunset the relationship as employer with that individual. Now later on, obviously we scale companies, and so I've scaled companies where um, we now have 140 employees, and there are people that have managers and their job isn't to do that. Their job isn't to create the strategy. Their job is to take that strategy and execute against it. And that's fine too, right? You just have to play your role.
Yeah, so take like so 6 is fire fast. I guess we'll go with 7 is hire correctly, hire right. So fire fast is 6, hire correctly, hire the right people at 7. All right, 8. Give me another lesson. Number 8.
Um, this kind of alludes back to something that we just talked about. But also when you said that I am very like stubborn, and then that's the idea of you can't do it all alone, and that you definitely need other people around you. And so the biggest lesson of you can't do it all alone for someone like me, who is very much so a forget it, I'll do it myself. Right? You can't do it. Oh, don't worry about it. I'll do it myself. Is that you have to learn the art of delegation, and that delegation is a superpower. If you can unlock proper delegation where you can empower people, right, to do their job efficiently, where you don't have to come and correct it and fix it and redo it, you have mastered and unlocked a superpower. And that is something I had to learn, and honestly still learning.
Same. I don't know if it's a startup founder thing or a Pisces thing, but I am with
I think it's an
you.
all people thing. I don't know.
But I am I struggled a lot with delegation, especially early on. My Sheena Allen asked my first startup was so different because it was bootstrapped. I was a solo founder. It was mainly outsourced, offshore as far as when I hired versus Capway. It is like you have W-2 employees. You have to hire the right people. This is VC money. Like you're trying to do, and it's like I started out still trying to do everything myself, even with employees and great employees. My CTO was absolutely amazing. Mind you, I
Mm-hmm.
can't code. I mean, I know enough to be dangerous, but I'm still, and I had to actually learn not to micromanage, which was also something that is my opinion. I think micromanaging is absolutely horrible. And I had to step back and be like, you hired the right people. You have to delegate. You cannot wear all the hats. You have to hire the right people for customer success. Hire the right engineers. Hire the like. And I had, to, but honestly, I still struggle with it. I am much better than what I used to be, but I still struggle with it.
Okay, I hear you. I think that we're all continuous learners in this process, especially in business, because
It's true.
there's
All right.
always something that'll test you. So,
Lesson
yeah.
number 9. I'm trying to think another one of the lessons that I would say was a top lesson because good Lord, I have bumped my head. So this is actually one that we spoke about a little, and that is when you're pitching. So a lot of people want to raise money, which the fundraising environment right now is really interesting. But with, the thing that I learned is that when you pitch to an investor, there's a good chance they're going to say no. Stats show they're likely to say no versus them saying yes. So you're going to get a lot of no's. But what I found in the lesson I learned is a lot of times investors will say, "Well, right now it's not a good fit," or "When you reach X, come back to us," or "Keep me updated." It's a choice by every founder is different, but the
Mm-hmm.
lesson that I learned is at least half of those people who say if you follow up, like if I pitch and I say, hey, in 3 months, these are the milestones we're going to hit. If I follow up in 3 months or 4 months and we've hit those milestones that I said we were going to hit when I pitched them 3 or 4 months ago, the chances of them actually saying yes the next time around was much higher. So whether it's a mentor, but especially when you're fundraising, if you follow up and you did what you said you were going to do, there actually is a good chance that an investor will say yes the second time around, even if they originally said no.
100%. So that means, founders, don't send an ugly email to someone that tells you no. Because it is a chance that they will tell you yes later. And I will tell you, I've had several investors that I received a no in the previous round and they came in the second round.
Yeah, I learned like that was the thing. And mind you, I know some founders like once they're told no, they're like, well, they told me no, so forget it. I'll just keep going, and that's okay if that's how you operate. But a lesson for me that I will give out is if you follow up and if you do what you said you were going to do, even if they don't invest, which I have seen it happen to me and I've seen it happen to other founder friends, even if they don't invest because you did what you said you were going to do,
Mhm.
they'll send you to somebody else that they know is maybe even a better fit. And they're going to say, hey, I think they're ready or that founder is XYZ. And you might get a yes from someone within their network, even if it doesn't come from them. So follow up if that's your style, but just make sure when you follow up, you did what you said you were going to do.
Yeah, I definitely think the lesson is the follow up, you know. The win is in the follow up.
I never thought about that. That's a good tagline. The win is in the follow up, if that's your style. All right, lesson number 10, the last lesson, not the last lesson, because good Lord, we have a lot, but the top 10 lessons for us so far on our journey as entrepreneurs. What you got for me?
Okay, so I'm gonna tie two lessons into one.
All right.
And that is resilience is your greatest asset, but protect your mental and physical health.
Oh, I love it.
And
Because good
so,
Lord.
yeah, so on the front end of that is like, you're going to go through it. I'm just sorry. I don't know what else to tell you. I know that there is this negative connotation and reaction to the word resilient right now, but it just kind of is what it is. Like, you need resilience and grit in order to be an entrepreneur, right? You talked about the rejections, the setbacks, the no's. You have the moments of like doubt. And I feel the founders who succeed are the founders who just refuse to quit, right? They have this resilience about them that they keep getting knocked down, but they keep getting up. And that is resilience, that is grit. And it is literally going to be your greatest asset as a founder, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as someone who is building their own thing. And they have to really hone in on what's going to make me keep going when I feel like I hit a wall, right? But on the other end, you also got to protect your mental health and your physical health too, right? Sheena, you talk about this. I know we're going to probably dedicate an entire episode to this at some point, but burnout is real, right? And I think that no startup um, is worth you dying for. You hear me? Like, I don't think any startup is worth you dying for. And some people become so sick and they just see their health deteriorate in so many different ways that they are literally dying to keep their startup alive. And I don't think that that should be by any means what it should be or has to be. So make sure you're setting boundaries, make sure you're taking breaks, try to make, I just don't believe in like this life work balance, but I do believe that if you say that you're going to take 5 days off, that the world will not end. Your company will not fall apart if you actually took those 5 days to
Yeah.
yourself to reflect, to rest. Your company will be okay, right?
Do you know
And so that is my final lesson.
the first person who ever really told me that, like in my face, like not maybe not in my face, but like really set me down and said that to me was Alexis Ohanian, aka Serena Williams' husband, because most people don't know him by name. But Initialized Capital was Capway's first investor, which was I actually got there through Jen Wolf, who introduced me to Gary Tan. But Alexis at the time was still a GP there. And I remember the first time I met him, and he was like, I don't believe in hustle culture. He's like, yes, when you're first starting out, the long nights, working to 2 a.m., figuring it out, like it is a time where like you're not getting a lot of sleep and all of that, but the hustle culture should not last forever. And he was really
Right.
the first person to really just have a sit down conversation, just being like, I'm not going to glorify the fact that you're going to be up at 2 a.m. for 5 years, 10 years. Like that is not how this should work. Get your sleep, take a break. Mental health is important. He was by far the first person who had done something great. Reddit, of course, now was a public company, but who had built something that turned into a unicorn and say, yeah, hustle culture is not it. And I was like, for the first time, I was like, because I'm definitely like burning at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. trying to get this thing going. But
Yeah.
loneliness, mental health, physical health definitely takes a hit as entrepreneurs. And I think we definitely, all of us are probably guilty at some point of probably putting too much on ourselves physically, mentally, and emotionally than we should.
Yeah, and I do think, to your point, there is some hustle about starting a company and running a company. I think there's just somewhere in the middle you have to meet between soft life and hustle culture for 10, 20 years of your life, right? There's somewhere in the middle you got to meet. I also don't believe when starting a company that you could live a soft life either, so you got to figure out the balance.
Yeah, I feel like we hear so often entrepreneurs say this life is lonely. And we tell family, we tell friends like it's a lonely journey. And we say lonely is not like we don't have friends to talk to. Like, I have best friends, you have best friends, you have or a spouse or parents, or we all have somebody. So we say lonely is not like we don't have anybody we can pick up the phone and call. But sometimes it's like a mental loneliness. It's like I'm having to get ready to pitch. Like I can tell my mom I'm about to pitch, but she has no clue what the heck I'm talking about. I can tell my best friend I'm going to go pitch. She would have no clue what the heck I'm talking about. So I think it's more of a mental loneliness that most business owners experience because the people around us doesn't necessarily get it. Even though they're super supportive, they're very supportive. They just don't get it. And so that mental loneliness definitely takes a toll. But to your point, to echo what you just said, no business, no side hustle, no startup is worth dying over. It's not worth throwing your mental health or physical health so far into the ground that there's no turning back. So I love that lesson.
Yeah, and something you made me think about that I am guilty of to this day is that I am a person that suffers in silence. Like, and I think a lot of founders and entrepreneurs are, right? You're just trying to figure it out in your own brain because you really, the person, maybe your family, whatever, probably don't really understand, right? They're always like, "Oh, it's gonna be okay. Oh, you're gonna figure it out." And meanwhile, you're in your head, literally doing, that meme with all the math formulas is like right here. You're doing all the math. You're doing all the math in your head, and sometimes 1 plus 1 is not equal to 2. And so
Facts.
I do believe, and myself included, that entrepreneurs and founders suffer in silence more than like any other group. And I am so guilty of that.
Yeah, same. I can't even front. I'm right there with you. And it looks good. And I tell people all the time, this stuff looks so good on social media. We're like in the magazines and like on the blogs and we're doing speaking engagements. It's like, oh my God, like he's doing it. She's doing it. I want to be a startup founder. It ain't as pretty as it looks. Like it looks really good on social media. But the real life of this world, I might smile in this picture, but on the inside, I'm just like, I'm just trying to survive till tomorrow.
Yeah, and that goes back like the idea of suffering in silence. And it's people are like, well, why don't you tell people? Honestly, I think even if you told people, they still wouldn't quite get it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They still don't quite get it. Another founder may, but they're doing their own thing. They don't have time to console you, only to a certain degree, right? You have people to talk to, and you want to have a circle of friends and founder friends that you could talk to. That's like a big lesson for me. I was like trying to figure that out, and that became hard for me. I will say, even with my company, because I had accelerated to another level where it just wasn't a lot of people that looked like me
Yep.
anymore. And I did not feel like I could talk to other people. And then I would talk to men and they would be like, well, that mean that's like common sense. You know, I'm like, okay, whatever.
Well, back to being
Whatever.
the life of an entrepreneur. Good gosh. All right. Well, those were our 10 lessons. Again, we have way more than 10, but those were our 10 lessons so far on our journey. We hope that the lessons that we have shared will help you along your journey because mind you, everyone's journey is different. This is definitely not a one fits all. But we do hope these lessons for sure will help you and or make you feel seen, because I think a lot of times people are like, dang, somebody else is dealing with that too. So we hope that these lessons that we've shared make you feel seen and or, again, maybe will help you not take some of the pitfalls.
Yeah, I know what's coming. Well, thank you all for tuning in again. Of course, it's Savitra and Sheena, Rich Lessons. And this is episode is epitome of many rich lessons that we have learned over the course of our careers. But until next time.
Until next time.